Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. We have a very special bonus episode for you today with a very, very special guest and friend of mine. You're actually going to be hearing from her and her own career coaching methodology at the end of July. But her and I have been having some conversations offline, and we thought, hey, why don't we just bring this to a podcast and have a conversation around race and the workplace. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce you to my friend and fellow career coach, amazing woman, Adunola, as we talk a little bit about race in the workplace. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jena ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. I'm super excited for our guest today. You're actually going to be hearing from her in July, the end of July. We have her episode schedules where she's walking us through. She's a career coach. Her name is Adunola, and she's going to be walking us through her own methodology. But I wanted to bring her on before then. And I reached out to her. She wrote this amazing article on Forbes, the 3 things you should not say to your Black colleagues right now. And we're in the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this conversation is coming to the forefront. And Adunola, I'm so glad that you're here to chat more about why did you write this article right now? Let's just start us out there. And you and I have had conversations kind of offline. And I just thought it would be really fun to have this conversation so that everybody could hear from this as well.
Okay, yes. So I am so excited to be talking to you. You are a dear friend of mine. And so when you reached out about talking about this, it was a no-brainer. And so for me, writing that Forbes article was just, I felt it really necessary to say something about this from the corporate aspect, because one, I'm a career coach and I work with so many different people, but I also do work with a lot of Black women. So, and being a Black woman, seeing their experiences still after leaving corporate America myself, it just felt, and not just Black women, Black people, it just felt really important for me to be able to shed a light on what that feels like and what I could imagine they feel like now, knowing what I felt like back then. And so it was really important to me to bring a story to the advice in a sense, because
it's so easy to read those articles and you're like three tips and you're like, Mov, this is my story. This is my story with it. Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Exactly. And so it's crazy because I wrote the article in a few hours and I posted it. I published it.
You're like, done. Forbes, Here you go.
and it's crazy because I had already had something else that I wanted to write. And I already had it ready, and it was about like COVID-19, which is probably going to still come out. But I just felt like it was the right time. And when I was thinking about, well, maybe I shouldn't say anything at all, I was like, wait, no, that doesn't sound right. Like, what would I say if I was to talk about this? And it just came very naturally to me to just be able to share that. So, it was a real story. And for those who haven't read it, I basically shared about my experience when the Charleston church shooting happened in 2015. I was still working. It was like the last year that I was working in corporate America, which probably added to that.
You're probably like, I'm done. I'm going out on my own. It's time.
And, it was first, I had already been working there for some time, and I had always been the only Black person there, except for one IT guy who wasn't really there. Like, he was like, in his own little world and just came and helped, the office when we had issues. So I was the only Black person. And so I already knew the weight of that in a sense of like feeling like I was alone. But when the Charleston church shooting happened, I remember just feeling like shocked, because I remember it happened. And then the next day I was like, I was grieving, I was disappointed, I was sad, I was angry, I was all of these things. I
all
was
the emotions,
confused, and I remember going into the office expecting everyone else to be like feeling the same way, or for us to have conversations about it, or for other people to be disappointed or grieved or whatever. And I remember that nobody really talked about it. I remember even kind of bringing it up to like my team and them being like, oh yeah, that's really sad. Like, I can't believe that happened. But it wasn't,
you're like, that's
outrage.
It?
Right.
Like, I mean, I can admit that I probably would have been guilty of the same thing for sure. Yeah. And embarrassingly so. Like, I for sure would not have connected the two. And I can say that honestly, and I'm not proud of that. So tell us more about so you're walking into the office and nobody was really responding. What did that feel like for you?
Like, it was a lot of different levels because, and there's so many thoughts to that, which is why, one, I'm very proud of the voices that have been coming out through this situation with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. Like, because I think for a long time, a lot of Black people in corporate America felt like this is just how it is, like we have to make other people feel comfortable. We don't want to come off, especially Black women, as the angry Black woman. You want to make other people feel comfortable. We've learned like to make other people feel comfortable. So on many layers, it was like, well, okay, we're not talking about this. All right. Guess that's just part of the course, like this is what it is. But then, so I think that the outrage that I've learned to express wasn't always there, because I speak for myself and the people I know, like it was like, it didn't feel like we had permission to do so. So when you feel like you don't have permission to do so on an internal level, you don't always give your own self permission to even feel frustrated. So I remember looking in the office like, well, all right, I guess we have to focus on work, like that's personal. This is work, and I remember going home and having conversations with my family, like, yeah, nobody really talked about this today, and I think when the memorial service happened, which was during work hours, and I needed to watch it, I remember just looking around and seeing everyone just laughing and moving around, and I don't think CNN was on, like there was something else on that wasn't showing the memorial service. And it was just like, people were just moving and grooving. And I was just like on the verge of tears watching the memorial service. And I don't want to say that nobody cared, but it felt like no one cared as much as me, know? And so for me, that was just like disheartening, and just like, it
just made you feel like you were alone, right?
Right, exactly. Like it felt like, well, this is what it's like to be the only Black person. And this is what it's like to have the majority of people in your office be white, and that they don't care about these things, And again, like I can't say that wasn't true. I don't know what they were talking about. And I think even in that time, maybe people felt less like they can bring those topics to work. But I do feel like I didn't see the heartbreak that I felt.
Yeah, it wasn't matched. Whether they did or not, you didn't feel it. There was that disconnect there for you. And I feel when for your own experience, like after that, how did you show up to work like the next day? Because I feel like there's got to be some sort of like, not resentment, but just like feeling of aloneness, that feeling of loneliness. Because the reality is, when we've talked about this offline as well, and we both talk about this in our messaging, that you're a whole person. You can't really compartmentalize what happens at work and what happens at home or life. It really, and especially in the day of digital and technology, it really compiles into, well, it's both and. It's a both and conversation. So it's illogical for us to expect, or for corporations to expect that doesn't happen.
Right. I mean, I would say that the way I felt the next day is the way you feel constantly as the only Black person in your office. There wasn't really like, oh, I can't believe, like, it's like, this is just what it is, like as the only Black person, And I say this with people who are probably have different sexual experiences than people at work, or people who are people of color that are not Black. Like, when you don't have other people who look like you or who get you, you know, like you just feel like you learn to, in a sense, compartmentalize your workplace. And for me, that just didn't align with me, because obviously I'm a career coach today. I have always been passionate about having a career that fulfills me, that aligns with my values, that allows me to show up, because my work is just as important to me as my personal life, you know? So to have to shield my passion for who I am, the experiences I have as a Black person, it was like a constant thing, you know, it's a constant thing that you have to do. And it wasn't like I felt, it literally was like I had the conversation with my family and friends, like, you know, it was weird. Can't believe no one really talked about it. Yeah. And we all talked about how that same thing happened to them, you know?
Gosh,
so it wasn't like it was normal in a sense, unfortunately, like a normal thing. And so I think what irritates me now and what is frustrating now is that 5 years later, I'm having conversations with clients who are Black and, you know, friends who are working in corporate spaces. I'm getting DMs from Black people who I don't know, who are reading my article and telling me that the same exact thing is still happening to them. And so for me, it's like, one, in this state of the world was literally, or the country was literally on fire, you know, with so much outrage. And for any person to walk into the office and have someone say, "How was your weekend?" as if we didn't all see the protests and the looting and the fact that there were protests in every single state of the country, and that's never happened before. And for someone to have to answer, "How was your weekend?" What Netflix shows did you watch on a Monday morning call in 2020 is just, there are no words.
Yeah. Why do you think that happens? Because I'm like thinking that through my head, like, why does that happen?
I can't speak for, you know, other people who are non-Black. You know, I can't speak for like what their experiences are, what your experiences are.
Yeah.
But I think that what my perception is that it's easy to ignore.
Right.
You know, like, as a Black person, you don't have the luxury to turn your head and say, like, this isn't real, you know? Like, I think that for a lot of, so I'm on social media a lot, like a lot of the rest of us.
Yeah.
And
we had a nice long conversation about this before we even hit record.
I have been on it. And there was a Black woman who was at the protest in Los Angeles, and she talked about her experience. I'm going to tie it back to why I think this happens.
Yeah, totally. Go with it.
She talked about her experience with the LAPD, and it wasn't a pleasant one. It was a very horrific experience, actually. And I remember reading the comments, and someone was like, "Why would you exaggerate this? Like, why would you lie about this when that's just not happening? That did not happen to you, and you shouldn't be saying that it did." This woman doesn't know the woman. She doesn't know the woman who shared her experience.
Oh my gosh.
But she definitely said that she was exaggerating, that that's impossible to happen, that that's not the protocol for how police operate, so they wouldn't do that to you, kind of thing. And so immediately when I saw that, and she was obviously not Black. And so when I saw that, I was like, you know what? This is her way of keeping herself safe. Because if she thinks that this is what the police are capable of, then she now accepts the reality that she also is not safe in this country, or that somebody who is Black, who she knows, is also not safe in this country. And so it's easier for her to believe that this is just not happening, so that she doesn't have to accept the reality that this is possible. And so I feel like in the corporate space, one, I think it's easy for other non-Black people to act like it's not happening, because if you act like it's not happening, then you don't have to accept that it's happening. And if you don't accept that it's happening, then it doesn't feel real. And because we've been prone to compartmentalize work, it's like, well, this is work. We're not going to talk about life. So we can easily just brush over it, you know? So I think those are probably many of the reasons why it's so easy for other people who are non-Black to act like it's not happening and ask, how's your weekend? The how's your weekend just really kills me. Cause it's like,
well, have you seen the internet? Have you seen what's going, I mean, and I can say that in times past that I for sure was probably that person. Like, how's your week? I was oblivious, and I kept myself that way because for whatever reason, I don't know, for all the reasons of it being uncomfortable for me, not really understanding how much that truly impacts my Black friends, and not really, I am embarrassed to say that I did not really think about it from the lens of another individual. And that is not okay as a white person. So I am saying that fully, that is not okay. And I feel like even in our interaction that we were having kind of offline, and you even helped me see just how much, and this is not your job. You did not have to do that at all whatsoever. So be clear, everyone hearing me, that's not her job. But you helped me see, whether you realized it or not, that my apathy was actually selfishness. And that I never want, that I do not want that to be a part of my personal brand.
Right.
And as your friend and as my other Black friends, I was coming to terms with that and repenting of that and realizing that is not okay. But I think what you're saying is absolutely, it was more comfortable in the past, not any longer. Forget that. It was more comfortable to live in the like, it's nothing's happening in the world. I'm going to live in my little bubble. And like, that's that. But as you mentioned, and you told me, it's like, I don't have that luxury, Jena.
Right.
And that was really powerful. And I think it's really powerful for other people. If you're a white person listening to this, that is a powerful sentiment. Like, I don't have the luxury not to think about this.
Right. So. Yeah. It's, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's just like, we don't, and so there's times like I have this conversation with my friends all the time in my family. And it's like, when we see another Black person killed, for me personally, I have a hard time processing it, like I want to look away, in the most transparent way. It's like, I want to look away, because when you look away, you want to forget that this could happen to you, that it could happen to your family member. It could happen to your like anybody, but even the split moment of wanting to look away, you're like, you can't, as much as I would want to, as much as the thought is like, don't look at this, you cannot. Like, there's another power within you that's like, you must, like, you have to see, because even though it has not happened to someone, and it is a reminder that it has already happened to someone, and so because it's already happened to someone, and because it has happened to someone who looks like you, the injustice has already happened. So you must look, and so we don't have that. Like, it's not that we don't want, it's not that we wish that we could, and, it's not that, it's not that it doesn't come, but it's like, the luxury is not available. Like, I think about this woman, and I talked about her, and I talked about the parents in my Forbes article about how they had to have a conversation with their 6-year-old daughters. And my nephew is 5, and he was a Black boy. And eventually that conversation is going to have to happen. Actually, he's 4, he's turning 5 in October. And so I thought about like how eventually somebody's going to have to tell him, like, who's going to tell him? Like, someone's going to have to tell him. And the thought of that, I highly doubt that those parents wanted to sit their 6-year-old daughters down and tell them that, hey, daddy is white, mommy is Black. You are a Black child. Someone would want to harm you potentially because you're Black. No one wants to have that conversation. I'm sure that family thought about it so many times. Like, maybe we should wait till they're 7. Maybe we should wait till they're 8. How about 12? But it's like, you don't have the luxury, because as much as you don't want to have that to happen or have that conversation, you have to. And so I think when I've seen a lot of people, especially in this recent season, talk about like how they're learning and this is just the beginning of their understanding, a lot of white people, it's like, wow, lucky you.
Yeah.
How privileged, how blessed, how cool, that you don't have, that you're just learning, like that you're just learning this. Because, I was listening to a conversation, and these 2 people, Black, one was Black, one was white. A white guy was like, never have to worry about my son getting in a car and getting stopped by a police officer and being in danger because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, really? You don't? Oh, like it sat with me for like a week because I was like, people really don't, like other people don't have that experience, but it's something that we constantly think about. And so when you think about all of that, and then you're faced with going into work
right,
as the only Black person, we've been taught to just deal with it, you know, and just like, this is just how it is. Like I was talking to someone recently, or someone, one of the people who DM'd me for reading an article, and he was like, I'm the only Black person on a team of 100. And I totally recognize how you feel. And that article really, resonated with me. And I was like, the only Black person on a team of 100?
I mean, like, what company is that? Should we go after them? No, don't say live on here.
No, I didn't even want to ask, but that wasn't it. Like there were so many other people. This woman was like, I'm the only Black person. And, I'm the only Black woman on a team of 40, and other people telling me the same thing. And it's like, how is this like, so when you think about it like that, it's so much easy for you, the non-Black people, to ignore the situation because they only have to deal, quote unquote, with that one person, and that's probably the one person in their life that they know that's Black. And that was what it was. That was what my experience was when I was working in in that office of the only Black person. A lot of those people, I was the quote unquote Black voice for them, the Black perspective.
Interesting. Yeah. And so
they didn't have that.
So that actually brings me to my next question. And we've kind of been dialoguing about this, but as companies, because we obviously are in career coaching space, and again, we've talked about this offline, so we're repeating ourselves, but what should companies be doing? Because we were kind of joking that we're seeing a lot of even just small businesses who are, hiring diversity and inclusion and equity specialists and all this kind of stuff. What do you feel like is the most important thing that we, either as small businesses or even just corporations, if you're a part of, an HR, if you're listening to this, if you're a leader at a company, regardless of where you are in a company, what are the things that we need to be doing to make sure that it's a very obvious thing, but like that we're not only having one Black person in a team of 100.
Right. I think that, so when I see people say that they want to hire like diversity, inclusion, equity specialists and consultants and all that, I think that's cool, but I don't think that that's exactly right. Like, I don't think that that's exactly the answer, because I think that it's important to have diversity. I think it's important to have inclusion. I think people should have equity. And I think that it's important to have conversations with people who are going to help you strategize that. But I don't think that that's the answer to the issue, because I think it's a hard issue. One, which has nothing to do, in a sense, with the corporate world, but affects the corporate world. But I think that it starts with hiring more Black people in general. Because, for instance, with the person who talks about the 1 out of 100 in 2020, the 1 out of 100 Black people in your office, you cannot tell me that no other Black people have applied for a job there.
Right, exactly.
Like, you cannot tell me that you haven't tried to hire for a marketing role or an engineering role or any role that you needed that you deemed essential to the growth and continuation of the business, and that there were no Black people other than that one Black person who applied for the job. So I think that it starts with hiring more qualified Black people who are top candidates, but essentially, as we're seeing in the numbers, are getting ignored for reasons that we don't know. And if there's a lot of biases that come with that, like maybe as a recruiter, as an HR person, or as a hiring manager, you feel more like confident about people who look like you. And so it's like, let's have more Black people in HR spaces.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's have more senior leadership who is Black, let's have more voices in leadership who are Black and who are people of color and who have been marginalized, so that other people who are marginalized have a door that there's a door open for them, because I think that it's nice to have diversity, inclusion, and equity specialists talking to you once a month. But if that's not turning into more Black hiring, then you don't have those perspectives when you're thinking of a solution for your clients. You don't have those perspectives when you're having a team meeting. You don't have those perspectives when you're faced with issues like this. Like, you don't have any other perspective other than what you know, because you don't have those people around you. And so I think that it really is as simple as that. And then it begs the question of being the token Black people in the office. Like, they hired us because we're Black. And that's frustrating in itself. But if that's what it takes, in a sense, to have more Black people so that other Black people feel like they're not by themselves, and so that other people who aren't Black see how intelligent, how amazing. And I mean, they know that. Like, a lot of people, we see how much Black culture has infiltrated so many different avenues of how everyone lives their lives. But if that's what it takes for that office to be infiltrated with Black culture and see other Black people and have their perspectives, have their voices and strategy, then let's do it, But I think it starts there. And I think that it can be as simple. Obviously, there's so many other answers, so many other solutions, but I don't think that I haven't seen a lot of people say, like, we're going to start being more intentional about hiring more Black people. And maybe I just haven't seen it. Maybe that is happening. But I think that
I honestly probably haven't seen a ton of that either.
Yeah. And I think that why are we not talking about
It's like the most simple of answers. It's like, you're like, why are we complicating this?
Why are we complicating this by hiring one diversity and inclusion and equity specialist? Like,
I feel like we're not, because it's missing the being in the fabric of the company too.
Right.
Because if it's in the fabric of the company that we have, and it's proven statistically too, where I feel like, do companies just not believe it's true, these stats, that like when you have more diverse teams from racial backgrounds to economic background to all the different backgrounds, right? Sexuality, all that different stuff.
Right.
Like, that makes a more successful team. Like, it just makes a more successful team. But I feel like people almost like don't believe that stat or something because their hiring isn't related to it. So it's very, very interesting.
It's so weird because it's like, because if you really do think about it from a money perspective, which is what drives a lot of these businesses, your clients and your customers are not just one shade of people. They didn't go to the same college. Right. They don't live in the same neighborhood. They're not the same ethnicity, the same race, the same economic background. Like, they're not the same people. So when you include your office of people who look like your customers and your clients, you get a better perspective, period.
Yeah, period. Yes, you're so right.
It is a revenue maker or a revenue generator, even in that of itself. And that shouldn't be the reason, obviously, why you want a diverse place. But I just don't think the diversity and inclusion trend is the answer, because it's been the trend for years now,
right?
And we're still having people say that the only Black person in the office are the only Black few, and that just doesn't make sense, because that isn't even a reflection of the different races in our country,
Right.
So where are they at?
Yeah, where are they at?
Like, let's go get them,
I love it. What do you think, like, as coaches, that we can do to make sure that those voices are heard? Is it using our platforms? I mean, I'm kind of putting this question to you on the spot. I mean, it's been something I've been thinking about even as well. Like, how do I make sure that those voices are heard and companies do know about, because we're not recruiters, but we are coaches.
Right,
so I don't know if you've thought any about that at all.
I mean, I feel good because I'm Black, and so I don't want to feel like I'm Black, but I'm Black. And so because of that, it's like, I don't know if you've seen people say this, but it's like, I was Black yesterday. I was Black last year. I'm going to be Black next year. I'm going to be Black the year after that. Like, I've always been Black. So this has always been a thing. Like, I'm glad that, other people, people who are not in our communities are starting to see, and not just white people, like Hispanics and Asians and like different people are starting to see the frustration and the outrage of what happens to Black people in America. But this has always been a situation for us, you know? So I'm grateful because I've had the pleasure of working with many Black men and Black women to help them elevate their careers. And it's always brought me joy when I've seen people reach out to me and say, hey, I don't see a lot of, you know, Black career coaches, and the fact that you are one and that you're really good at what you do, I want to work with you, you know? And so that's always a joy for me, because it's like, it's really important for one, and this is a whole nother topic, I guess, but as a Black person, I'll talk about like career coaches in general, but as a Black person in general, like, I think it's really important for Black people to stay, you know? And when I say stay, like stay wherever you are, in the sense of like, if you want to be in corporate America, I feel like there's been a lot of chat about Black women, especially leaving corporate America for entrepreneurship because of the frustrations we're constantly, you know, handed, or the frustrations we constantly feel in the workplace. But I think that it's so important for Black women and Black men to stay in corporate America and rise to leadership roles, because we need you, you know? Like, I think that if you leave, who is anyone going to look up to? Like, who are the people after us going to look up to if we're all entrepreneurs, you know?
Right.
And essentially, I mean, you can be an entrepreneur and have businesses and you're hiring Black people, and that's awesome. You're hiring different people. That's awesome. But I think that it is really important to, you know, for Black women and Black men to stay and to climb the ladder if that's what they want to do, and to rise to the leadership roles if that's what they want to do, and not to feel exiled because of the situations that they've been put against. Because when they are there, they leave the door open for other people, other Black people who may not have felt like it was possible for them. And so for me as a career coach, it was so important for me to be where I am, because I know that when you, as a Black person, you're always looking for the Black people. You're always like, where's the Black person? You're like, I can't tell you, I watch commercials, I watch TV. I'm always like, I'm looking at a website, where's the Black person? Like, we're always looking for each other because we don't see each other. And so I think that as a Black coach, Black career coach, being here is really important for me, because I give place to feel like, okay, this is how you learn your values. This is how you align your values to what you want. And so then on a bigger perspective with all career coaches, I think opening the door for different people to know, like, this is what you need to do to take responsibility of your career. Like, you are in charge of your career. You don't need to wait for anybody. Like, around the time when the whole Charleston church shooting happened, it was also the time that I was like, I'm leaving. Like, I don't want to work in this office anymore. And for that reason and many others, you know, and being able to know that I was in control of my career, and that I can speak up for myself and get another job, and I know how to do that, was meaningful. You know, I ended up actually a month later transitioning to a new office in that company, because I didn't want to, I just wasn't happy fully there, you know? And so being able to know how to advocate for myself and speak up for myself, I think are lessons that career coaches need to really make sure that they're imparting to their clients. Like, it's not just about getting a new job and saying bye, you know, but bye. Right, gotta go. It's about like really making sure that when you get that new job, it's a job that you know aligns with you, where you know that you didn't pretend or have to hide who you were as a person to get the job, but you got the job because you really showed up as who you are, and they love you for it. You know, and knowing how to do that, and knowing how to, again, once you're there, recognize that you are valuable and that you do have opinions. And when you do all the legwork, knowing that when you are there, you are hired because you're good and you're great at what you do and you have value. And I think that that's a game changer, because when you operate like that in your job search, you're able to feel more confident in your job. You know, you're able to feel more like you belong there because you were hired there being who you fully are. You know, so that's what I think as career coaches, it's important to do that. Not just show someone how to have a great resume or how to say the right thing in an interview, but what do you want? How do you know? How can we make sure that you know that you are thebomb.com, if we're still saying that?
Yeah, you and I can still say that, because I tell my clients that too. Do you not know how amazing you are at your work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can we make sure you know that?
Yeah.
And then how can we make sure you show that? And then that changes the game, for Black people and for people who feel like alone and marginalized, and knowing that when they show up, they're showing up because they know they deserve to be there.
Yeah. I think everything you're saying, I align with like 120%. I'm just like cheering on the other side. Go, yes, everything you're just saying. I think one of the points that you said that was really interesting that I feel like I'm always telling my clients too, is like, don't ask why if you got invited to be in the room, don't question why you're there. Like, just own it, be there. Right. Like, you were invited to be in the room, speak up. Right. We want to hear from you. And if somebody doesn't, that's their problem. That's not your problem.
Right. Exactly.
And
I agree.
I think that's such an important piece where I love that that's what if you're a career coach listening to this, everything Adunola just said, I'm like, yes, +1. Oh, well, friend, I am so grateful for you. I'm grateful for your friendship, and I'm grateful that you just told your story and that you were willing to come on here and share that story. And I hope that if you're listening, you are listening. And for my Black friends that are listening, I hope that this, check out Adunola. She's amazing. And I'm so proud of all the work that she's done. And I'm proud to be her friend. And do you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
Thank you.
All right.
Everything you said was great.
Awesome, guys. Well, I hope to see you in another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. Where can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me on employeeredefined.com, or you can find me at The New Employees on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Adunola Adeshola on LinkedIn.
She's awesome on Instagram. I'm always looking at her Instagram game and being like, oh, I need to up it.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, and guys, we'll see you next week. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jenaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.